Hi, everybody. This is Muhammad Aslam Mirza. Assalamu alaikum. I'm welcoming you to the podcast by PMO Strategists. That is the company who are working on PMO, especially the Center of Excellence, providing support services to the business houses and helping them to move strategically and building their organizational competence. And in that endeavor, I have Dr. Terrel, and he's going to um, bring his exposure and his knowledge and his experience in managing the businesses, particularly. Uh, I will go to him when I feel that his introduction will be justified only when he speaks by himself for his exposure, because I may not justify and capture all the areas which are really important and relevant to him. So before that, as I have just brought to your understanding that PMO Strategies is the business house which is helping the businesses and professionals to move in strategic directions. And this endeavor essentially is to help businesses to move with the force and with the strength of the project management, because this group is essentially has the expertise of strategic project management to move and help businesses. The endeavor of this podcast is essentially to bring to the understanding of the business houses and the professionals that what could be the different viewpoints to manage their businesses in the present time challenges, particularly the complexities, because the complexities are there and those are going to be there for all time to come, and those are not going to fade out. Of course, some will go down, but additional are definitely expected to be added. So that is the area which needs to be discussed, and different viewpoints from the different experts and different professionals needs to be captured. So this endeavor is essentially in that line. And the basic idea is to bring the different viewpoints and different understanding and different approaches for the benefits of the businesses and for the benefits of the professionals who are working in their field for their advancements successfully. Uh, Here is my exposure to business and industry. Uh, Particularly, I will bring to your attention my 4 books, which is written under the theme of Aura. Aura is AURA, and A goes for application of project management principles and practices for organizational transformation. U goes for understanding of human factors. R goes for respecting diversity, inclusivity, and particularly the inclusivity stands uh, for the bringing into consideration all the factors of the human elements. And again, R, that is for agile in project management and collaboration. So this book is available on Amazon, and for your interest, if you are interested, you can go and find the value up there. Uh, Here I have captured the complexities which is happening at the moment, and this has got 4 parameters. That is external, internal, operational, and strategic. Now I will request Dr. Terrell to start with his introduction, and then I will place the first question to him. But before that, Dr. Terrell, please come up with your introduction.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Casey LaFrance. I am an accredited change manager, an accredited change professional with the Change Management Institute at the specialist level, and I teach public administration and nonprofit management at Western Illinois University. I've also had some training from the Change Management Institute, Six Sigma Global Institute, Management Strategy Institute, PMI, a lot of different places. And so I have a multifaceted kind of approach where within the discipline of public administration and nonprofit management, I'm housed in a political science department. But a lot of the challenges that we face in those practices are analogous in some respects to what we see in the business world. And I think that there's a lot of carryover, especially from Agile, that we can look at implementing in the nonprofit and public sectors.
Oh, great, great, Dr. Terrell. And definitely your exposure will add value to the working of the professionals and the business managers. Uh, I would request you to touch upon the complexities which are listed down here in these four areas. It's up to you, whichever you want to take up, because your expertise and your exposures may be more important in some areas. So it's up to you. Whatever you want to take up, please choose upon and share your exposure and knowledge and experiences, particularly with regard to the management of all these for the advancements of the endeavors, for the advancement of the project, for the advancement of the initiatives, and how you were able to manage all that. That is the first question. So, Dr. Terrell, back to you, please.
Thank you. So when looking at the complexities that you've listed out, Mohammed, they can be grouped into sort of categories that are reflective of the challenges that we face in the 21st century, regardless of sector. So the first complexity that I would point on as sort of a bucket that a lot of this stuff fits into would be fluid participants. And that's because we are seeing networked governance rather than hierarchical command and control implementation of project plans or policies. Instead, what we're seeing is a diffuse network of participants. And often it's difficult to discern who is the central actor, if anybody, who has central authority, who has legitimacy. And along with that, the fluid participants, it tells us that people can come and go, and it's very difficult for us to hang our hats on any one leader or any one person in an organization because they come and go ephemerally. So trying to address those stakeholders requires collaboration, and it's a little bit counterintuitive because it requires what the nonprofit managers call competitive collaboration. They're competing with one another for grants and other opportunities, but they have to collaborate to be able to facilitate service provision. They need each other, but they also have to compete with each other for an increasingly smaller pot of money. So, along with that, fuzzy boundaries, and this is between sectors. So, uh, just an idea of that in the United States federal government, for every one federal employee, there are 9 contract employees working, doing a very similar job in the private or the nonprofit sector. And so the shadow bureaucracy, as scholar Paul Light called it in his book, is something that we have to account for. And also the fact that in federated systems like ours, we have jurisdictional boundaries that overlap. We have situations, especially wicked problems, things we've never encountered, that require unique responses. And again, it's difficult to say when, say, Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. It's difficult for the Army Corps of Engineers, the Coast Guard, FEMA, the Louisiana state government, the New Orleans city government, the National Guard, all these people to cooperate. And what happened there is what Don Kettle says is bound to happen more and more in the future. A Coast Guard admiral named Thad Allen assumed leadership, not because he had any legitimate claim to that title, but because he wanted to get things done. Um, he wanted to introduce agile principles. He wanted to distribute tasks and work in smaller bursts to show that you could create value incrementally in rebuilding and responding to these disasters. And that's what Don Kettle calls a rocket scientist, somebody who is able to develop non-routine solutions to non-routine problems. And I think where we get hung up as decision makers and managers in business or in public administration is we tend to look at how we've done things in the past as a guide stone to our present and future decision making. Right? It's system one or incremental thinking, and it has some advantages. Right? We don't have to worry about sunk cost being made in vain. We don't have to fight old battles. We don't have to reinvent wheels. We get some stability. We get some predictability. Right? All the things that are traditional features of the waterfall model. But with that comes the potential for escalation of commitment, right? If we're not checking in increments or iteratively, then we're not going to know until the final product or service is delivered if there are any flaws with it. So that can lead us to escalation of commitment, where instead of rethinking our strategy, we simply devote more and more resources to a failing cause, believing that that's going to solve it, right? Whether those resources are technological or human power or monetary. And I think the last point I would touch on in relating to those general themes that you brought up, Ollie, soft power, right? As a result of the fact that we don't have anybody uh, in international governance, for instance, right? No one nation can dictate the behavior of another, right? And so what we're relying on more and more is soft power. And this is working at the community level through what George Frederickson calls administrative conjunction. And the idea here is that local government officials and nonprofit managers interact with one another, those who share similar capacities, for instance, city managers or budget analysts. They talk to one another about these shared challenges that are crossing their jurisdictional boundaries so they can come up with a collaborative response, right? The other part of administrative conjunction, if we look at it from the macro level, we're seeing this between nation states, especially in the areas of regulation, law, so legislation, and even adjudication, right? We're looking at precedent from other court systems in other sovereign places and seeing whether those should apply to our own or not, or to what degree. And what that requires is people who are legislators, judges, executives, regulators from all different places to talk to one another, because it doesn't matter whether you're in China or Pakistan or the United States, climate change, rising sea levels, things like that are going to be affecting you. So we're all in it. And that's where I'm reminded of one of the oldest definitions of change, and is Kurt Lewin. And he says simply, uh, the one thing we can say about change is we're all in it, right? It's something we're all a part of. So if we remember that and think a little more holistically and outside of traditional restrictive boundaries, I don't think we have to give up quality control. I don't think that we have to give up accountability. I think it just has to adapt to a new reality.
Just great. Yes, very great. Uh, Particularly, you have mentioned the collaborative, the competitive collaboration. That's you mentioned, and then you mentioned something very important, that incremental thinking. That's really important. And before I go to the next question, I would just request if you are able to make use of artificial intelligence in your endeavor and management of the of your advancements until now.
Yeah, in fact, artificial intelligence I see as sort of the vehicle to creating on demand, very specific, very germane use cases for training. So, right now, through AI, through LLMs, I can come into your organization, study your SOP, study a little bit about what you do, conduct some background research, and then adapt training cases to your very specific needs. And that to me is being willing to try the new technology and respect it for what it is, right? It's just like a hammer or a screwdriver or any other tool in our toolkit. Where we get in trouble is becoming lazy with AI. I use it all the time for contracts and things that don't require mental effort, right? It's not writing my books, it's not writing my journal articles because it's not human. And we have to remember what AI is. It's a mirror of society's known collections of thoughts and criticisms of thoughts and ideas from thinkers, right? So when we ask, I have my students interview Jeremy Bentham from the grave, right? They actually have his body stuffed at Oxford University on display. They taxidermied him and they roll him out once a year. And he's reported as present but not voting. If you wanted to hear something creepy today, but I have my students interview him and ask him, "Hey, your utilitarian theory, how does it apply to, say, the internet or global governance or the oceans?" And it's not them talking directly to him, but it is a good way for them to engage with his ideas, right? And as long as we respect that, it's not the Delphic Oracle, it's not God, it's not the angel Gabriel that's going to show us everything. It's simply a tool, but it's a very effective tool that can be honed. And I think what I would say in addition to that, training from IBM on Coursera is amazing. Um, Jules White at Vanderbilt University is a master prompt engineer, world renowned, and Jules White's prompt pattern guide is probably the most effective if you're trying to learn how to draft prompts for these sorts of things usefully and quickly. And the last scholar I would mention would be Jean Law at Kennesaw State University. She has a technique she's developed called the rhetorical prompt technique, and it's based on her experience as a rhetoric teacher and writing center director.
Ah, great, great. I really liked your comment on AI is a reflection of the society. Well, that's I really liked it because this is the first time I heard this terminology.
Yeah, and I would like to just issue a caveat very quickly, Mohammed. With
Yeah.
that, uh, we have to recognize that it's also reflective of who has historically held power in society and created that knowledge. And so, um, there are a lot of ideas from the Library of Alexandria that we never saw because it burned down, right? There are a lot of ideas. The Muslim world was having a renaissance before, while we in the West were still in the Middle Ages, still in the Dark Ages, right? So it's a little bit of a misnomer to call it artificial intelligence and say that it's reflective of all of humanity. It has a definite white Western bent to it, right? And that goes along with the reproduction of hierarchy. The people that were victorious and the people who were colonists wrote the history books, right? And I say all that because AI has some tendencies to be biased, especially against people of color and women. There have been a couple of studies that have showcased that, and that's something we need to be mindful of, right? It's something that we need to work on correcting. I have a colleague, for instance, who drops his kid off at a daycare. He's an African American guy. He drops his kid off at a daycare and he goes to pick him up. Every other parent can walk up to the door and their face is scanned and they're admitted. When he walks up, the scan doesn't work, right? So there's a lot of bias that needs to be accounted for. There are hallucinations that need to be accounted for. There are all kinds of caveats, but it's like anything else. And I would say we could say that much the same about human beings, right? We are bounded in our ability to be rational. We're not omniscient. If we were, we wouldn't need God or whatever else is out there. And I say that because that's really where AI began. If you look at the roots of AI, it started with a public administration scholar who was also a world-class computer scientist, a world-class economist, won every award known to God and man. Um, Herbert Simon. In Herbert Simon's book, Administrative Behavior, he says, look, we need to rebel against scientific management and its techno rationality and its efficiency orientation because it's premised on a lie. And that lie is that we can be rational. Our rationality is limited, right? Rationality in its truest form would mean we could weigh and measure and compare and contrast an infinite number of ideas. And we're human beings, right? So Herbert Simon wrote this book. He advocated for what he called satisficing or choosing the good enough option. And then he spent most of his career while he was building the Carnegie School of Organization Theory. Just in his spare time, he also created, in many ways, what is the infrastructure that became ChatGPT and other LLMs, right? So his recognition of human limitations actually gave rise to this tool. So it's kind of interesting how it loops back into 21st century use.
Yeah, very right. Very true. Okay, doctor, let me move to the next question. What will be your suggestions and your advice for moving to the next level in performance?
I think what I'm seeing right now, and this is coming out of the economic woes in the United States with the pandemic and the aftermath of it. Resources are a little more constrained. right? Especially in government. A lot of state institutions are state located more than they're state funded, right? And we're having to do more with less, right? And that's kind of something we've heard before, but we haven't had the appropriate vehicles. And I think lean, with a focus, especially on Six Sigma principles, tied to agile and the use of artificial intelligence, can really introduce some efficiencies while also assuring that quality isn't going to be touched.
Okay, that's great. Just great. Well, I suppose we have captured our agenda for the day, and I really you have been very extensively touch upon all the areas and brought up your valuable suggestions and your experience and your wisdom. I'm definitely sure that is going to be helpful for the business managers and for the professionals to move their career. With this, thank you very much, Doctor. And I'm going to publish this on as many platforms possible for the knowledge of the professionals. And
That sounds
I'm
good.
sure.
And I just wanted to offer a couple of other concluding thoughts, and this is the I'll shut up. But I've been working a lot in workforce development and vocational rehab, and I'm seeing a pushback against DEI in some respects. And I want to emphasize DEI isn't just something that we have to feel warm and fuzzy about. It's because diversity leads to diverse perspectives, and we need that more than ever before. And I think neurodiverse perspectives are becoming an area where people are starting to pay attention. Around 30% of the population identifies as neurodivergent, and that could include autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, PTSD, any number of conditions. And I think finding ways to integrate these folks who have historically been excluded from the workforce and allowing for their novel insights is one path forward.
Very right. As a matter of fact, that's the imperative, strategic imperative for the organizations to move with their businesses. And you have very correctly touched upon that. Well, in fact, at my second stage of my podcast, I'm going to touch upon major areas of the requirements out of the complexities. And you are very correctly mentioned this. DI is definitely, since as I said, that is strategic imperatives for the organizations to implement their strategy and to be successful and to ensure their sustainable growth. So definitely, so that's what my plan is. But at the initial stage, at the present time, I just want to move on with the maximum viewpoints and maximum experiences and maximum wisdom from the professionals and top managers who can contribute to the understanding and to the knowledge. So at, thereafter, definitely, I'm going to touch upon that area. Thank you very much once again. Okay, doctor, with this, I'm going to close it off.